Hello everyone, this is update for August 7, 2023, day 530 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for August 6th. As you can see, I'm gonna start with China with strategic development, and I'm gonna switch to situation in Ukraine and just generally around Ukraine. So first, uh, we have very horrible numbers out of China. As you can see, export is declining, and it's declining at faster pace. The previous one was 12.4, as you can see, and then before it was 7.5. So really, the situation is, I would say, getting out of control in China. Import is also declining, but at a slower pace. The trade balance is still positive for China, so which means that export exceeds import. So call it it's still profitable for China, but at this pace, at some point, it will become literally unprofitable for China to export, and that's going to be a really explosive moment. But for now, it's clearly not there. And as you can see, foreign exchange reserves grew up. And sorry, this is supposed to be July. I apologize. To 3.2 trillion from 3.193 trillion. So this is highlights, and one of the main, sorry, just one of the main reasons China these exports are declining exports to the U.S. But overall, where they dropped, I think there was a cumulative number for January through May, which obviously doesn't affect this moment, was minus 24%, and apparently that trend continuing. In any case, this is essentially means the end of Chinese export-oriented model, which is the main generator of wealth in China. I would say the only generator of wealth in China. And the situation internally in China is going to get really, really explosive. If this trend continues, it's probably already is, because the numbers are really horrific for China. So what this implies is that chances of war are going up exponentially, for the simple reason that the current Chinese leadership does not have any positive economic solution or way out of the current situation in China economically. And so, as I said before, the consumer bubble, which includes real estate bubble, is blowing up. It's anyways never was a source of wealth. It actually was a burning through wealth, essentially. And then this export model right now is broken because of the trade war, essentially, between U.S. and China, and that also overflows to European Union. So essentially, two main sources of profits for China, Europe, and let's call it North America or US and Canada, basically quickly declining. So, uh, so essentially, Chinese government has two opportunities to maintain internal stability. Uh, Either figure out some solution to this, which they will not be able to because the way they think, it's very rigid communistic thinking. It's the essentially tight government control and directives, which is opposite to what it used to be, where it was closer to free system. It's not never was free, but at least it was there was opportunity for entrepreneurs there. At this moment, it's definitely going away. And so the option that's left is to channel all of this negative energy externally, and so this pushes more than anything that moment of this potential war. Hopefully, it's not going to happen. And so I want to actually mention something that if China were to start this war, one of the sort of non-trivial approaches to this war would be actually uh, attack first, actually, or simultaneously South Korea, using obviously North Korea, but then sort of using Chinese volunteers in dressed up as North Korean soldiers. So basically, replay of Korean War 1951-53, and sort of first knock out South Korea. That would actually allow China to somewhat ensure its northern flank of the attack on Taiwan, because if you really think China need to sort of block Taiwan from north, from south, and obviously uh, from east. Essentially, the northern one is exposed to attacks from obviously Japan, and South Korea kind of protects Japanese flank. So if you take out South Korea, then essentially it means Russia and China fully control this main landmass. So the only sort of opponents to China are going to be just islands, essentially. And so that also preempts any future opportunity for any landing operation, or make it very difficult, any landing operation against China. Also, what's important about South Korea, two factors is it's very valuable manufacturing industrial base for West. In some ways, it's rivaling Japan and Germany. In terms of military, especially military production, I would say it's definitely ahead of Germany and Japan. And the more important part of it is that it can produce at large scale quickly, meaning South Korea. So that would, significantly undermine West's military manufacturing capabilities. There's also a lot of important chip manufacturers there, including Samsung and others. So that also would create a big problem, big hole in the Western supply chains of semiconductors and products made from semiconductors. I'm not saying that this is the scenario, but I would say if, let's say, Chinese military top is thinking in non-trivial ways, they may try to do it. What this also achieves is then Japan is almost like semi-encircled, and it's going to be more concerned with sort of protecting its flank from threat from South Korea rather than protecting Taiwan, and so that creates perfect opportunity then to encircle Taiwan, block it from the north. Essentially, this one is already kind of a blockade, and then Philippines, there are U.S. bases there, but it's definitely not as strong, sort of kind of call it bridgehead, as South Korea and Japan together. So basically, China essentially takes out the more difficult northern flank, and then southern is anyways not as strong. So that's sort of option. The only big problem is obviously is that South Korea, it's about 50 million people, I believe, and also it's very well equipped military-wise, so it's not going to be easy walk. So that's the only big challenge to it. But you never know. Things may get things are definitely getting desperate in China. And by the way, the same economically similar things are happening in Russia. And by the way, Russian ruble again dropped by another ruble to 97 to US dollar again. Sign of deteriorating economic situation there. At the same time, like Japan is also very not prepared military-wise. So there is like a desperation attempt in Japan to do last-second preparation. So it's basically equipping military cargo planes with air to surface missiles, essentially. So it's like almost you going to F1 race and just taking regular road track and hoping to win. That's essentially what you're doing. It just signal of level of unpreparedness and desperation in Japan. Now let's move closer to actual situation in Ukraine. So I want to clarify one thing. So Ukrainian army never actually reached the main Russian line of defense. It's still like fighting through this sort of forward field or whatever you call it. It's not really screening positions, but it's just kind of like first week initial line that's really just designed to slow down progress. It's never meant to be sort of main defensive line. So even through all of this time, as I said, Ukrainian forces never reached main Russian defensive line. And I would say at this point, this so-called offensive, I wouldn't even call it really a real offensive, as I said before. It's really just many strong tactical pushes that are, you cannot call that offensive. That's very different sort of thing by nature. So that whole thing essentially stopped. Don't know what's going to happen. I think it's becoming very clear to Ukrainian military command that the way they try to do something is just simply doesn't work. And obviously it's not going to work. And Ukraine is going to get, I think, like 30 Abrams tanks, and that's not going to change anything either. It's too little. They are, I would say, nothing special in my opinion. And giving that the way Ukrainian forces are in terms of quality, poor command, poor organization, poor training, they will not make any kind of significant dent on the front line. So essentially, it just will help to have better defensive, hopefully, and that's the whole essence of that equipment. So this is really becoming more and more of war of attrition, and the problem for Ukraine, and it's becoming much more clear. I think it starts to settle down in sort of minds of many people on the front line that the way it's being done, it's not, you cannot win this war. It just effectively for Ukraine, it's becoming slow death by thousand cuts. Because, as I said before, Russia has 4 to 5 times numerical advantage, and so they realize it. And Russian president is exactly saying we're just gonna, bleed Ukraine wide, or bleed Ukraine to death by this strategy. So they don't. Russia doesn't need to have major offensive or anything. Just continue pressure, tactical pressure, and eventually. It will drain all of Ukrainian resources, and the most important, human resources, which already created significant problems. And I think in coming months it will get just exponentially. It will be getting exponentially worse. So, in a summary, Ukraine is essentially in a strategic dead end. So it cannot. It's becoming more and more clear. It cannot continue the way it did for past almost year and a half, and Russia at the same time can continue for some time. At the same time, I'm not saying that Russia in good shape. No, it's going down, but the problem is it's much bigger sort of object, so it takes much longer to sort of fall apart, as opposed to Ukraine, and that's a big challenge. We'll see what's gonna, how it's all gonna play out for Ukraine. But now let's just quickly walk through the front line in a clockwise fashion, starting from the north. So the situation along the state border is actually somewhat quiet, much actually quieter than typical. Now let's move to the north Lugansk front line. So here Russian command is continuing its tactical pressure. It's not offensive, just simply tactical pressure to on Ukrainian sort of command to bring more reserves into this area and to definitely completely stop any offensive attempt, and guarantee there won't be any offensive attempts on Zaporizhya front line, essentially. But so far, no successes over this couple days for the Russian troops. Now let's move to North Donbass front line. Northern sector is really completely quiet, just skirmishes, nothing essential at all. And in the southern sector is actually Russian troops attempting to counterattack and attempting to regain lost ground near Klishivka, here Kurdyumivka, and actually this new area near Dachny. So, so far they were not successful. They are unlikely to be successful. And again, this is tactical push. Nothing really, major in terms of it's not offensive. And that's, again, I'm going to highlight that this is a whole point from Russian perspective, is to inflict losses, continue inflicting losses on the Ukrainian side, to, as I said before, to drain Ukrainian army out of the most precious resource, which is people. Now let's move to the central Donbass front line. Again, the same Russian attacks in typical areas, north of Avdiivka, Mariinka. And as always, no success, but and I'll keep repeating it, but the success for Russian side is essentially killing Ukrainian soldiers. They don't need to really gain ground. Just killing Ukrainian soldiers is, by definition, leads Russia to success eventually. Now let's move to the Zaporizhya front line. So things here also fairly quiet. There was, again, small-scale tactical Russian attack to regain lost ground near this village Roboline. Didn't go anywhere, but that was not point. It was just to, again, to inflict losses. Now let's move to the front line along Dnipro River. Things here are basically status quo, no changes. Neither side attempts to do basically anything. And as I said before, I believe that the Ukrainian offensive is essentially so-called offensive that was never really ever offensive, but whatever there was, it's essentially over. And it's just going to be a defensive situation, and I don't see any good way out of this current strategic dead end, giving the Ukrainian political top, military top, and it's very clear there won't be much more military equipment coming from the West. So if you have those two parts of equation, there's no other way to sort of have success for Ukraine. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time.